Welcome, everybody, to the Sheridan Report, brought to you by MyBookie.Ag. If you want up to $1,000 deposit on your first 50% deposit, make sure you go to thegruelytruth.net, click on the MyBookie.Ag banner at the top of the page, and that will take care of you. Or you can go to MyBookie.Ag and put in the promo code TGT50. I am your co-host for the Sheridan Report, Mike Goodpasser. Right now, let me welcome in Bobby Sheridan. How you doing, Bobby?
Hey, Mike. Good morning. How are you? And ready to talk some NBA, ready to talk some Major League Baseball, and I think you might have a hockey game you like too, so let's get into it.
All right. Go ahead. Major League Baseball, Bobby. You're up.
All right. Major League Baseball today, Mike. We've got three-team parlay today that we put in, and we've already got one of the games going. The first leg was the Washington Nationals. Remember we talked about that we have a lot of morning baseball that pops up often on Wednesdays and Thursdays. So on those days, it'd be advantageous if you want to get the three-team parlay or some of the early stuff to definitely go on Twitter and see if I have any late ads, which I do today, and I'll talk about that. But the Nationals were in a good spot, and they're up 2-0 early in that game. And if we can get them and nail that game, we've got two late games that we're going to finish off the parlay with, and that's the Angels at home over Seattle. That's starting a 4-game series. That's a rematch. They just played last weekend, and Seattle defeated the Angels at home 3 games. But now we're coming back to Anaheim. And then the other game would be San Diego tonight, a favorite at home over Cincinnati. And Cincinnati travels down to San Diego from Dodger Stadium, getting beat in those 3 games. So we've got the Padres with their young star pitcher Chris Paddock, and the Angels with Chris Stratton, who I think the Angels are in a good spot in this game because Seattle with Felix Hernandez, even though Felix has thrown, better than probably anticipated his first 3 outings, I think the Angels have had a chance to look at him and will return the favor tonight. So the Angels and the Padres with the Nationals, I think that's a pretty strong 3-teamer. But you missed the Washington, so you've still got 2 you can mix and match with. So that's how you make money sometimes. And one game you can definitely throw in for a new 3-teamer would be my top play tonight, Mike, and that's the Colorado Rockies. The Rockies were able to finally overcome their poor start, and they won back-to-back games in San Diego. And the key to this game, I believe, is Kyle Freeland and coming back home off a day off. This team really needed some rest for their bullpen, and they're coming home as a slight, small underdog at home, basically an even bet. Phillies would have to lay like about $1.10 or $1.15. So you got Colorado at home with their best home pitcher, Kyle Freeland. Their bullpen rested after a day off, and Philadelphia had to slug it out and win against a division opponent in the Mets. I think there's a little bit of a letdown spot here in with Philadelphia, and so I like Colorado a lot tonight, and I think the Rockies will get the job done there. So that's basically what's left with the Major League Baseball slate, Mike.
Okay, Bobby. What about the NBA?
The NBA got a top play tonight. Top play would be the Philadelphia 76ers. And, this is a really interesting series. The NBA in total is interesting. Let me bring up some points. I tweeted a little bit about this. The favorites are 12-4 through the first 2 games of each series. It's been 16 games so far. The favorites are on a roll. And this is after the underdogs had won straight up 3 of the first 4 playoff games. So that's 11 out of 12 favorites winning and covering, even in miraculous fashion like Boston did last night. We had Boston. We got very lucky. We gave 7.5 points, and they scored the final 10 points in 1 minute. It should never happen, but we got it. And so the favorites tonight have gotten the money. You got Philadelphia opened up 2.5, and they're now 3.5 over Brooklyn. You got San Antonio opened up 3.5, and they're 4.5 over Denver. And then the Golden State line is 8.5, and it's remained steady. The other thing I wanted to bring up is the zigzag theory. It's been pretty successful. It was 2-0. The favorites were 2-0 yesterday, but the zigzag theory prior to that was very successful. And tonight you have 2 of those games that are aligned. I'm not on either one, but I want to bring this up for people that like trends. The favorite San Antonio and the favorite Golden State are both in the zigzag spot, which means you get the opposite of what just happened. So Denver just beat San Antonio. Okay, so we're coming back in the next game and taking San Antonio. And, same goes with the Clippers and Golden State. So I'm off of both those games, but some people will be on those games for those reasons. Both of those favorites and zigzags have been winning at a high percentage in the playoffs so far. So, those two teams are going to be well bet today. But the game I'm on is Philadelphia. And the Sixers, okay, the team that's won the first and third period in this matchup has gone on to win the game. So the game one, Brooklyn won the first period, came up at a halftime, won the third period, won the ball game. Philadelphia returned the favor. They got off to the good start, and then they had a little bit of a lull in the second period and then pounded them in the third. They scored 51 points, an all-time high for a period. And I think this is where the series really started, was third period of game two. Philadelphia comes out, fans booing a little bit at home after the game one loss, the lackluster first half, and all of a sudden, Philadelphia puts up 51 points, and they found something, Mike. They found an inside game. They found Ben Simmons taking over the game. He had a triple-double. They shot 55% for the game. The Nets made 15 three-pointers to Philadelphia's 8, and that's a winning formula. When that happens in the NBA, you're looking at 85% win. When a team shoots 15 or more threes against an opponent that makes less than 10, that's 85%, yet Philadelphia bombed them. So obviously the rebounding edge, the inside game, they found ways, mismatch to take advantage of, and I think that's going to carry over into game three. So I like the Sixers tonight, minus the now 3.5. I got it at 2.5 last night, but it's now 3.5 in most places. I think that's the right money, the right side, and I like the Sixers tonight as my top play.
All right, Bobby. NHL, there's no dogs I would really jump on tonight. I like the Knights to finish that series. I like Winnipeg. I like Carolina. I don't know that I like them enough to bet a parlay with them. And really, I don't like the odds to bet the game straight up, so I would kind of stay away from this tonight, I think.
Okay. Yeah, the one game that I thought you might like, I was really interested in hearing, was the Vegas Knights, because you've been all over that series. You've been right every time. So I thought maybe I wanted to hear
like the Knights, but it's minus 110. I mean, it's...
Yeah, giving up a little bit of value there. And you might be able to find even plus 100 some places. That's what it's on mine. So that would be worth it to me, if you didn't have to lay any juice. But, the Vegas Knights don't have to win tonight.
That's what worries me about it. And I think the Sharks have some injuries, but their season's on the line here. If I was going to bet this, I would go a 3-team parlay at a Hurricanes, Jets, and Knights. I think it would pay a little bit more than 3-1 or 4-1. I'm actually considering doing it, but I haven't yet, so I wouldn't recommend it. I might recommend it later on after I think about it more, though.
Yeah, I like that. I like the thought process is getting some value going to the Knights tonight. You can get those two small, favorites in.
Yeah, because it's almost 4-1 if you put those all together.
Yeah, and that would be worth it right there.
But
a little note, Mike, on the NHL playoffs, the underdogs have won 18 out of 29 games thus far. So it's been a complete, crapshoot. You alluded to this, Mike. You were right on this before the playoffs even began, that the NHL was wide open and, anything could happen. And you were very smart because, look, we've already had a huge upset. We're sitting on another one, correct? We're sitting on a couple more.
Yeah.
These series are completely unbelievable, and so I don't follow the hockey because I don't handicap it. I don't try to make money on it. I don't know enough about it, not experienced enough. But we do know in sports, that sometimes things just are crazy like this, and obviously this playoffs in the NHL is like that. So neat for those fans.
All right, Bobby. So we are getting ready for a little On This Day. So we'll be back after this commercial break, and we're going to talk a little Mike Schmidt. So make sure you come back in 1 minute. Hi, I'm Mike Goodpasser from the Grueling Truth Sports Network, and I'm here with just one simple message. If you're watching the games, it's time to start making money. The Grueling Truth has recently partnered with MyBookie.Ag, an industry-leading sportsbook website, who reminds you that where you bet is just as important as who you're betting on. And that's why The Grueling Truth urges you to check out MyBookie.Ag. In addition to the usual thousands of odds, money lines, proposition bets, and futures offered on MyBookie.Ag daily, they also have in-game live betting and a mobile site that makes wagering on the go easier than ever. So join now and MyBookie will give you up to a free $1,000 cash bonus on your first deposit. Just enter promo code TGT50, that's TGT50, to take advantage of this offer. You can also go to thegruelingtruth.net, click the banner at the top of the page for MyBookie.Ag, and also get the same benefit and the same $1,000 free cash bonus on your first deposit. So visit MyBookie.Ag, courtesy of The Grueling Truth, and enjoy winning today. MyBookie.Ag. You play, you win, you get paid. All right, we're back on the Sheridan Report on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. I'm Mike Goodpaster here with Bobby Sheridan. Bobby, what do we got for on this day?
Hey, on this day, Mike, there's a lot of good ones and today, and there's one that I really want to hone in on, though, and you said it. It's Mike Schmidt, greatest third baseman maybe of all time. I want to hear your thoughts on this. But 1987, Mike Schmidt, this was the day he hit his 500th home run, and I can see it in my eyes. In my head, I can visualize it. I've seen this shot many times replayed. And what are your thoughts on this, Mike, on this man?
Mike Schmidt, I think, was the greatest third baseman that ever lived. He played at Ohio University, took them to the College World Series in 1970, then went to the Phillies farm system, and the Phillies thought so much of him. Following the 1972 season, before he was even called up, they traded Don Money to the Milwaukee Brewers to open a spot for Schmidt in their infield. And Don Money was a really good third baseman, and I think 10 years later, he was on that Harvey Wallbangers team that went to the World Series, wasn't he, Bobby?
I think he was. I think he was the big veteran on that team. That I do think he was, Mike.
Yeah, and then 1973, he hit 18 home runs, but he only batted like 196, and he struck out like 150 times. 1974, the thing that stands out to me was he was playing in the Houston Astrodome, and he hit the longest single in baseball history. He hit a ball off Houston Astros pitcher Claude Osteen that looked like a home run, looked like a sure home run. The ball hit the PA speaker, suspended 117 feet above and 329 feet away from home field. Fell into center field. By the ground rules, it remained in play, and Schmidt was held to a single. So I think that's always interesting to hear. But then he struggled with strikeouts his first few years, and the Phillies weren't very good. But you get to 1976, and the Phillies end up winning the National League East. They got swept by the Big Red Machine in the three-game series. 77 and 78, they played the Dodgers in the playoffs. I think they lost both of those series 3-1. And on December 5th, 1978, the Phillies signed Pete Rose as a free agent, which made him temporarily the highest paid player in baseball. Rose is on board. You've also got, what do we have, Larry Bowa at shortstop, Bake McBride, Gary Matthews, and of course you had Steve Carlton. Tug McGraw was in the bullpen with that team. And you get to 1980, and this team kind of takes off after the 79 season. And the thing I remember about Schmidt here is because I actually get the DVD of these games, but the Phillies went into Montreal in early October, tied for first in the National League East, and Schmidt basically won him the National League East. He had a sacrifice fly in the first, a solo home run in the sixth, which led to a Phillies 2-1 victory to capture first place. And then a day later, Schmidt hit, I think his 48th home run in the 11th inning to give the Phillies a 6-4 extra inning victory, which clinched the division. And then they played the Houston Astros, and we talked about this series from an Astros perspective last week, but they ended up beating them 3-2 in one of the great series of all time. And Schmidt just had a career 191 postseason average, or he hit 191 in that postseason in the National League Championship Series against the Astros. No home runs, 5 RBIs. But his bat came alive when it mattered in the 1980 World Series. He hit 2 home runs during driving in. I'm about to choke to death here. I should have ate right before I did the show. But drove in 7 runs against the Royals. The Phillies beat the Royals in 6 games. And you remember that was the one where Tug McGraw, I think he struck out Hal McRae, wasn't it, wasn't the last batter Hal McRae?
I think so, Mike.
Yeah, and then you remember Tug McGraw throwing his arms up in the air.
Yeah, threw his arms, gloves, and everything.
Dropping to his knees, and then he made Tim McGraw a great country music star. So that was the other thing the 1980 Phillies put in. But
yeah, that's true.
And then actually, weirdly enough, I think Schmidt's greatest season might have been 1981, which was a strike-shortened season. He hit 31 home runs, which was 7 more than anybody else in the league. And that was a shortened season. I think they just played a little over 100 games that year. The Phillies ended up making the playoffs. They had to play the Expos, who were the second-half champion because that was the split season. The Expos went on to beat the Phillies. And then you get 1982, the team kind of dropped off. But 1983, they're back in LCS. And once again, they're playing the Dodgers in the NLCS, but they win this one in 4, and they go to the World Series to play the Baltimore Orioles, led by, of course, Cal Ripken and Eddie Murray. And the Phillies, the thing that was amazing here is a lot of people talk about, was it the 66 series, Baltimore and L.A., where it seemed like every game was 1-0 and how great the pitching was for that L.A. team that beat Baltimore. Yeah. And I think that this 83 series, the Baltimore Orioles held the Philadelphia Phillies to a team batting average in that 5-game series of 195. Schmidt went just 1 for 20 with a single. And, I mean, when you look at it, that was pretty much it for the Phillies while Mike Schmidt was there. They kind of fell off the face of the earth. But when I look at this, he was a 12-time All-Star, a 3-time National League MVP. He was the World Series MVP in 1980. 10-time Golden Glove Award winner, 6-time Silver Slugger, 8-time National League home run leader, 4-time National League RBI leader, hit 4 home runs in 1 game. That was in 1976, I believe. His name is retired. Jersey is retired by the Phillies. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame immediately 5 years after he retired. I think his last year was 1989 or 1990?
1989. 89.
Okay. So 1989, he retired. And
I love how he retired. I'm sorry, Mike.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
He retired with no fanfare. You know, he didn't do the World Tour thing. Am I right? I think he retired mid-season. No?
Did he? I don't remember, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, I mean that's just off my memory. I'm not researching anything, but I thought he retired mid-season and hung it up. But I could be wrong. But I will add this. He had that WAR stat, WAR wins above replacement. They've gone back now. And
see, I think you may be right. I can't tell you for sure that he did, but I think the main cause of his retirement, didn't he miss like over half of the 88 season too because of like a torn rotator cuff?
Yeah, he had injuries and things, but in the 89 season he started it out, and I remember him not completing the season. I remember him retiring mid-year, and he cried during his press conference.
Yeah, and May 28th, 1989. I just looked it up. He retired after a game with the San Francisco Giants.
Right. He was such a staunch guy. He's done that in his retirement, too. You don't hear much about him. He's not real personal. He's very personal. You know, his public life is not, really well known, outside of his close circles. And he did not go on the big fanfare, my last season. He didn't really like the publicity like that. This guy was all about business, all about playing baseball, and that was what was really impressive to me, was how he retired. He knew it was time, and he hung it up.
Yeah, and the thing here is, fans still voted him as the third baseman on the 1989 NL All-Star team, and he actually decided not to play. But he did participate in the game's opening ceremonies in his uniform. And that was, I mean, you're special when players do that, or fans do that for you. They did it for Hank Aaron in 75, I think, where he played in one last one. I remember the one that stands out to me the most was 1983, when Carl Yastrzemski and Johnny Bench both got elected to the All-Star team in their final season.
Right, and they've done it for Rod Carew. They've done it for Ozzie Smith, I believe. Just all the guys. The first ballot guys. The fans get it right, and that's why we can't take the fan vote away from them.
Well, you can't take the fan vote away because I think the All-Star game was supposed to be for the fans anyways at the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. And then they had the stupid idea of making it worth the home field advantage, which now that's gone at least. So,
yeah, that was
but
dumb.
I want to mention WAR, the stat wins above replacement. They've gone back and they added this newer stat to all the old-time players. And, Mike, you may or may not know this, but Mike Schmidt's WAR was 106.6. Okay, the number 2 ranked third baseman of all time is now Adrian Beltre, but we'll talk about that. But it's Eddie Matthews at 96.4. So he's 10 wins above replacement, better than the next greatest third baseman of all time. That's unbelievable.
Now, who in your opinion would be the second best third baseman of all time?
Well, I said George Brett. I think George Brett is the second best of all time, and third was tough for me just because I didn't watch Eddie Matthews. But I think it'd probably be Eddie Matthews and then Wade Boggs. That's how I thought of it.
So you would have Wade Boggs that high?
Yeah, I'd have Wade Boggs that high. Yeah. I think what he did for a team, being a left-handed hitter and, being a 340, 330, in his real prime, maybe 380 hitter. He used the whole field. He saw a lot of pitches. He was an excellent third baseman. He was you look at his wins above replacement, it reflects that it's 91.1. And George Brett's was only 88.4. So even though I ranked Brett ahead of Wade Boggs, I think Wade Boggs definitely could be in the top 5.
Well, I think Schmidt and Brett have to be 1, 2. Eddie Matthews is definitely my 3. What about Brooks Robinson compared to, the guy you just brought up?
Well, Brooks Robinson is probably the greatest defensive third baseman of all time, and especially what he did in a couple of those World Series. No one had really shown that before at that position. But, he was a little lighter with the bat. And if you look at his wins above replacement, it's well down at 78.4.
Yeah, but also you look at this. I mean, he did have close to 3,000 hits, 1,400 RBIs. He batted .267 lifetime. And I think his best offensive year was in 1964 where he won the MVP and he hit .317, 28 home runs, and 118 RBIs. I don't know.
But if you look at Eddie Matthews.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You had Eddie Matthews 2, right?
I had Eddie Matthews 3. I got George Brett 2.
That's 3. Yeah. And that's interesting. There's a lot of Eddie Matthews people out there that would put him definitely number 2. But I think what we're saying here is that Mike Schmidt is the clear-cut best third baseman of all time.
Yeah, and Eddie Matthews is a guy that 17 years, 512 home runs, a .509 slugging percentage, and he wasn't terrible with his glove.
Exactly. And Adrian Beltre is going to bring up a question because he's being talked about being a Hall of Famer, and he is. His numbers are there, but he's part of that. What do you do with him? He's part of the steroid era. So,
Did he test positive?
I don't remember if he was on. I think he may have been on one of those lists. I can't remember, but we know he did. But, the guy's a great player. I mean, the way he does things the way he did things on defense, and he was a 3,000 hits. And,
how about this? Is Barry Bonds?
He might be the second best of all time.
Is Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens, are they Hall of Fame worthy?
Well, I mean, they definitely are, but whether they'll get in, I mean, I know they're gaining some support.
No, I mean, we know what they did. Should that preclude them from the Hall of Fame?
This is a great topic for your Surviving Advance show. I'm more along the lines of get them in.
So you're all right with the fact that they were dirty doing it?
No, I'm not all right with it. I think it's just such a hard thing because, the whole steroids in baseball, I'll tell you this, I'd taken it if I was playing in the next.
Oh, hell yeah, so would I. That's not the question.
Yeah.
The question is, if you are doing something to give you an advantage over other people, it's like Tiger Woods. I mean, he was tied with the same guy who was supplying steroids to baseball players. Tiger Woods was using steroids around '08 or '09. That's why,
Absolutely.
to me, and this is my big thing, that's why, to me, what he just did is not that big a deal. Because I think he cheated to be able to do it. Whether it was 10 years ago or now, if you look at the size of him now compared to 2003, it's a difference between a completely grown man and a skinny runt. And my thing is this.
It's like looking at Barry Bonds. I mean, Barry Bonds pre-steroids and then now post. Have you seen Barry Bonds? He rides a bicycle around. He's a bicyclist. He looks great. He's in great shape. He looks like a normal human being.
Yeah, because he got rid of the steroids. And the thing is this.
Got rid of them.
Evander Holyfield, steroids. Manny Pacquiao, steroids. Floyd Mayweather, steroids. But it comes to the point to me, the Hall of Fame. I mean, what is the definition of the Hall of Fame? The definition of the Hall of Fame to me is the greatest players to ever play the game. Now, if you are Barry Bonds, how do you compare to a guy that didn't use steroids then? Let's just say you compare him to Hank Aaron or Babe Ruth.
It's really hard because, see, without the steroids, he's not in that class at all. He would have been a 400 homer, 400 stolen base guy. Still was a great player. Still probably a Hall of Famer. But you put him on the steroids, and he became the greatest hitter of all time.
So, to me...
That's fake. He would not have been that. He would not have been. There's no doubt.
But I think this. I think without the steroids, there's no doubt he would have been a Hall of Famer because of the 400 home runs, the 400 stolen bases. But when you do something like that to give you an advantage over everybody else, the problem is if you let them in, you kind of tell everybody else you're all right with it. Just don't get caught.
Well, but Mike, MLB was all right with it. You know,
I know they were.
2000 and whatever. You know, right? I mean,
I know they were. They were all right with that. They were all right with juicing the ball. They were all right with doing whatever they could to get the ratings up. But see, this is not what that's about because to me, the playing field has to be level from 1900 to now. And the whole thing about Hall of Fames is it's not. Because Babe Ruth, to me, greatest player because he pitched also, but Babe Ruth didn't have to play against the best players all the time.
Right. I mean, every era has its pluses and minuses. And these guys now, they have to face, 5, 6, 7 different pitchers throughout a game. You're 4 at-bats. You're likely to see 3 different pitchers. Minimum.
So what's harder? Is it harder to see 3 different pitchers, or is it harder to just have Bob Gibson throw to you for 9 innings?
Well, the game that Bob Gibson's throwing it, that's one's harder. But there's only 1 or 2 Bob Gibsons out there. When you face 3 or 4 different guys, 3 or 4 different styles.
Yeah, but I'll make this statement, though, Bobby. You say that, but if you go 1968, before all the extra expansion and everything, there's a case to be made that today, when you play, you're playing against 4th and 5th starters who would have been minor leaguers back in that day.
Yeah, that's right. Because it's so watered down. There's 30 clubs now. Yeah. So, I mean, this is the thing. This is the thing. And when Mark McGwire, he came out and finally admitted it, which was big of him to do. He wanted to stay in the game and maybe clean up his name a little bit. But he also said, "Look, it wasn't illegal. It wasn't illegal.
It was.
Steroids.
It was.
Well, okay, it wasn't illegal to take one of the substances that he was taking. I know that.
Wait a second. What was the substance he was taking?
Was it the androstenedione one or whatever? I don't know how you pronounce it. But
and that is a steroid. And this is the thing. People could say, well, it wasn't a rule in baseball, which is what I think you're saying, right?
Right.
But it was still a federal crime. So I would say it was probably still against the law, even though baseball didn't really put it in there.
Right. Yeah, it's a great topic, and it's one that we can go further on. I mean, here's another question, just monetarily. Roger Clemens, we know how competitive he was, one of the most competitive pitchers of all time. And his career was basically done at about 33, 34 years old. And by taking steroids, and he was a hard worker in the gym anyways, and getting his body right, and getting him back healthy, he played another 10 years and made another, even at that time, which was, we're going back a time now, he made another $185 million.
Yeah,
So that
but also
185
he made
is
himself a
living
Hall
on
of Fame
now.
pitcher on the steroids to me, because to me, when you look at him in the 1986 playoffs and the 86 World Series, it's not like he was a guy that was great under pressure.
No, you're right. He wasn't,
I
and
mean,
he
he tapped
overcame
out
some of
because,
those.
and I can tell you this, that when people bring up the fact to me, well, it wasn't against the law or against the rules of baseball. In 1990, though, the Anabolic Steroids Control Act was passed, which made it a controlled substance. I think it was a Schedule 3 substance. So it's been illegal since the end of 1990, start of 1991. So whether baseball outlawed it or not, it was still illegal, because I know this, in baseball's rules, it doesn't say you can't murder anybody, but it's still illegal and frowned upon.
Very good, Mike. That's a very good rebuttal to that, and it's a great talk. It's it's a sad thing to talk about.
Well, you
It's
know
too
what
bad
needs
we
to
have
happen? Like Bud Selig or Bart Giamatti or one of the guys from back there, since Mark McGuire admitted to it, they should have a press conference and apologize to everybody for letting it go on.
They should, but they never will.
Oh, no, they never will, because they'll act like they didn't know anything was going on, even though they benefited from it. And let's face it, after the strike, 1990, what, 4? Was it 94,
Right,
the last
94.
strike?
94.
Yeah, 1994, where you canceled the World Series and caused the team to move to Washington, D.C., probably, because, your National League Championship Series would have been the Expos and Reds, and the Expos probably would have went on to win the World Series that year, which may still to this day be the reason why they're not in Montreal, because that season got shortchanged. And
That's true, but they would have had to overcome the Braves. The Braves were pretty damn good that year, too.
They were in first place, though. But I think it was only by a couple games, wasn't it?
Yeah, like a couple games.
Yeah. Well, in my own fantasy world, the Expos win the pennant and then lose to the Reds, and the Reds win the World Series. But go ahead.
Yeah, well, and it's still going on now. I mean, these guys are able to take stuff now that's better than before.
Well, dude, I mean, we did our boxing show last night, and Jarrell Miller, who's getting ready to fight Anthony Joshua, or was getting ready to fight Anthony Joshua, actually got busted for a steroid. And it's a steroid that makes you lose weight, because Jarrell Miller's a fat ass and is never in shape. But he's getting ready to fight for the heavyweight title, so I guess he figured, hey, I'll take something so I can lose some weight, and my boobs won't be bigger than round card girls. And he takes this stuff. And the sad thing about it, when you read about the stuff, it was like GW 1516 or something. It actually was taken off the shelves 11 years ago and considered a poison, because if you take it, your chances of getting cancer go up by like 6,000%. And this dude was still taking it instead of doing any work. So now, instead of making $10 million to fight for the heavyweight championship of the world, he loses his license and he can't fight. And the thing is this: most professional athletes are doing this stuff. It gives you a huge advantage. Now, only a small minority get caught, because those are the ones that are dumb enough to not realize when to stop taking it, because they're going to be tested.
Exactly. It's the guys who make this and provide it, the good stuff, the stuff that the high-level athletes can afford to pay for. They tell you the exact schedule and the exact way to take it, and they're ahead of the testing. So they're really, if you're smart, you really cannot be caught.
Well, how about this? Something like Diana Ball, which is something a lot of football players use. Diana Ball is something that you basically cycle for a month or two. So let's say if you've never been caught before in the NFL, you will be tested, but they'll tell you like a month ahead of time. Only once you've been caught will they surprise test you. So let's say you're going to cycle a steroid for 2 months. Well, you played in the Super Bowl. Say you're the Patriots or the Rams. The game's February the 7th. On April 1st, I'm going to start working out again. I'm going to use steroids. I'm going to do a 2-month cycle. So by June 1st, you're done with that 2-month cycle. Now, it will stay in the system, so you would test positive for like 30 to 45 days. But you're June 1st, you're off of it, and I'm not going to training camp until July 23rd. Right there, I just use steroids, and I'm not going to get caught.
Right, you're good to go.
Yeah.
And there's in-season stuff that they take to maintain and stay strong and be able to bounce back week after week.
Well, actually,
And it's all,
once you've taken that stuff and you got it in your system, as long as you keep working out and you eat clean, you'll be fine. I mean, it's not something, but the steroids of today are not something you got to continue to use. It's just, you'll cycle for a month or two, you'll cycle off, season's over, cycle on them again, and you're fine, and nobody ever finds out.
Right.
But
hey, Mike, I got some good updates for our games. The Nationals are up 4-0. That's through 5 innings. So they're cruising along. That'll be the leading off our 3-teamer. And we got, the fans missed this one, but we had the Blue Jays at plus 170 this morning, and they just took a 6-3 lead. They're with a 5-run 4th inning. So we're in position there, Mike. We got a couple good games going, and hopefully those can hang on for us.
all right, especially that 3-teamer. I could use one of them right now.
Oh, man, we've hit 2 out of 3, four nights in a row, and that's been frustrating. But I will tell you, hang in there. We're going to be okay. It's just
all
April.
Right. And I went ahead and I went with the Hurricanes, Jets, and Knights. At $20, it pays a little over 5-1. So what the hell? It's worth a shot for a small amount of money.
I'll be putting it in when we get off. So that's the two earlier favorites in finishing with the Knights, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hurricanes,
right.
Jets, Knights. All right,
Very
guys. We're going to go ahead. You said the Blue Jays are up right now, right?
Blue Jays are up 6-3, and that's a nice 170 underdog.
Well, see, I got a 3-teamer with the Blue Jays, too. So maybe I could hit 2 3-teamers tonight. That'd be good.
So that means we need the Padres and Angels big tonight. We need all the karma going that way.
We need the Padres, the Angels, and in my other 3-teamer, I need the Yankees and the Rays, which seemed like pretty safe bets to me.
Big favorites at home.
Yeah. Man, that's why I put them with your big underdog. Then it pays at like 4.5 to 1. So,
well, today could be a good day in the MLB. And don't forget we got a game tonight that we have a top play with the Sixers that we talked about for if you're just joining in. And then we're going to watch. Let's really watch that Clipper Golden State game. No play tonight, but let's really watch that because I think tonight will give us a good play for Game 4.
All right, Bobby. You want to tell us about the handicapping guide?
Sure. The handicapping guide is a horse race sheet that gives you numbers, gives you the top 4 horses in each race at any number of tracks. There's 5 or 6 tracks that they'll handicap for you, and it's very inexpensive. And the guy does a good job, and he puts there's 33 handicapping factors that go into his numbers. They come straight from the racing form. So he does the hard work, the 50 years of work that he's put in. He does that. He puts it into a number ranking system, and it spits out the top 4. So I think the winning horse comes from the top 4, something like 75% of the time.
Yeah.
So on his numbers. So it really kind of narrows it down for you and gives you a fighting chance.
All right, guys, and remember, you can find Bobby Sheridan at Sheridan Report on Twitter or the SheridanReport.com on the internet. $5 or $10 a day or $50 a month. We'll get you to Sheridan Report the night before, or early in the morning, according to where you live. We're going to wrap it up. Me and Steve will be back with Survive in Advance tomorrow. Me and Bobby will be back at 2 o'clock tomorrow to pick all the games of the day tomorrow. Remember, you can hear all of our shows on iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you find sports podcasts. You'll find The Grueling Truth. So for Bobby Sheridan, I'm Mike Goodpastor. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.